The spline lubrication on a K75 is the most important maintenance job you can do. Most people who think that the spline lube job has been done on their bike are wrong. It hasn't, because mechanics avoid this. So do it yourself every rear wheel tyre change. With the bike still on the ground, slacken off the wheel attachment bolts, 4 of them. Then remove the brake caliper. Do not touch that top bolt. It's holding the caliper together. It's not holding the caliper on the brake disc. The key to the simple final drive removal is to put the bike on its centre stand, but sitting on a 2-inch thick block of wood. And to make sure that the bike doesn't move, come off its centre stand and variously fall over and break your head, tie the front wheel to the centre stand with a stout piece of packing nylon belt. Then, if you need to move the bike, you can simply go around the back and get hold of the luggage rack or whatever and drag it about. Unbolt the brake caliper from the rear drive and leave it flopped over the swing arm, or just put it in the wheel if you're only leaning the wheel over to one side, leaning against the silencer, and not removing it backwards out of the bike.
So we remove this bolt, we remove that bolt. Lift the wheel off the hub, move it over to the side. We can leave it right there. It's really not in our way. Now we can lift the caliper off. This is our speed sensor. This is what tells the speedometer how fast you are going. We're going to leave that there. Follow this wire along, unclip it, follow it up through here. We've already removed the side panel, which just presses on, and we have disconnected it. It's one of these connectors here, and that's it. This is free.
Don't remove the shock at this moment. Let it support the drive while you free it from the swing arm. Then when you're ready, just unhook the drive from the shock and pull it away. Make sure there's a support underneath the swing arm before you move the final drive. Remove the 4 bolts holding the final drive to the swing arm. It'll remain in place, suspended by the shock bolt. Make sure the support is properly under the swing arm so it can't drop any lower than it already is.
These can sometimes be a little bit of a bear, and we'll be back in a minute because these bolts are very, very, very long. They take a long time to unscrew. So we have our 4 bolts out. They've all been removed. As you can see, they are very long. As you can also see, they are rusty. There's no anti-seize on them. Wonderful.
Pull the drive backward and free it from the locating pins, wriggling slightly from side to side. When it's free of the swing arm, pull it backwards a few more inches to disengage the drive shaft, and then move it to the left to unhook it from the shock. Make sure that the bike is steady while you're doing this. The drive is now totally free and can be laid down flat on the rotor so that gear oil does not leak out.
So, we are now going to use our rubber mallet. We're going to tap on this to check the drive shaft splines and see if those are packed with grease as they should be. If they have been, we can yeah, that answers my question. Let me grab a flashlight. That has not been done.
I asked Chris, why do these splines dry out? And of course he had the answer. And it is?
Lubrication creep. The spline lube works its way up the shaft, leaving this end dry, so that even every time you change the rear tire, every 8,000 miles, if you clean and relube these, they still end up dry by the next 8,000 miles, frequently, depending on the lubricant you use.
To compound the error that BMW designed into this bike of a dry clutch which doesn't lubricate the rest of the drivetrain, they contrived to make the drive shaft hollow. So, as Chris says, any lubrication you put in the end of the drive shaft to try and keep the final drive spline nice and moist and greased migrates back up the shaft. So I said to Chris, what's the solution? Drive a solid piece of tightly fitting wooden shaft down drive shaft? And he said no. Far better would be a solid plug of external grade silicone. What a brilliant idea. And then that will stop the grease from migrating back up the drive shaft and drying out the final drive splines. And of course it's easy to pluck out the drive shaft in order to clean it inside to put the silicone on. Of course you need the drive shaft out of the swing arm in order to clean it and wait till the silicone goes off, and when you put it back in the swing arm you still need to give it a whack.
There you go. Now you can't pull it off. When you reassemble this, these bolts get torqued to 45 Newton meters. I already gave it a torque for the rear wheel, 105 Newton meters, 78 pound-feet. If your torque wrench is only in pound-feet, you don't want to convert it. Calipers are torqued to 25 Newton meters, the two caliper bolts that we removed. And that's it. Don't forget to plug in the rear drive speedometer pickup. Your shock nut gets torqued to 40 Newton meters.
This is the dark grey or black special grease, Honda 60 Moly paste, or Starbarags by Kluber, and it clings to the metal because it contains a high proportion of molybdenum disulfite.
3 big brushfuls. 8,000 miles later, this will be back for another rear tire. I am going to remove the rear drive again for the customer, and we will inspect and see how much lube is left. Line up the rear drive splines and slide her on home. There's nothing in between the swing arm and the rear face of the rear drive in the pinion area. That's it. You're going to use these bolts with copper anti-seize on them. So you're going to screw all 4 of these swing arm to rear drive screws in. You are going to lift that rear drive up. There we go. Whackity whack whack. That'll go with a little love tap. There you go. This shock bolt is going to be 45 shock nut. 45 Newton meters. Your caliper bolts are 30 Newton meters. Your 4 rear wheel studs, these get torqued to 105 Newton meters.